Hey friends, I hope your week is off to a great start. Today I'm going to be trying out Sohla's recipe for Triple-Threat Onion Galette from the Basically Better Baking series. So a galette is basically a less fussy, more rustic pie, and they can be sweet or they can be savory. Last summer I made Andy's tomato galette. It was really tasty, so I'm looking forward to trying this one out today. I'm a big fan of onions and garlic, and that is kind of what this one is all about. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. First up, I've got my dry ingredients here. AP flour, a little bit of granulated sugar, and some kosher salt, and we're just going to whisk this together. So the dry ingredients are evenly incorporated. We can move on to the butter. So I've got a stick and a half of butter here, and we're going to cut these into about 1/2-inch pieces. So I'm cutting the sticks down lengthwise and then into quarters. So these are about the size of a sugar cube, so nice and tiny. Once into the flour, you want to go ahead and just toss the butter around, get it coated so it doesn't stick to itself, and then we can go ahead and start smashing this between our fingers. We've got the butter all coated in flour now at this point, so you can see the little cubes are all coated, and now we can just smash them between our fingertips. All right, perfect. So I have gotten every piece of butter smushed at least once. So you can see it's very clumpy still, but every piece is at least flat or broken down slightly. Now at this point, we're going to stream in some ice cold water. This is going to help things come together just a bit, but again, it's going to be very rough, very shaggy, and we're going to turn this out into the surface and continue working with it here. All right, so you can see that this is super crumbly, but that water did kind of get it to clump together just a bit more. So now at this point, it's totally fine that I've been really messy with my mixing because we're going to turn this out onto the surface anyhow. I'm going to sprinkle down just a bit more flour just to prevent sticking. Get this turned out on the pile. All right, so this is clearly a crumbly mess. What we're going to do now is just use our hands, kind of smush it together into a square. So I'm just not being very precise about it, just getting everything to stick together. All right, great. So I've got a rough little square here, and now using my, what's it called, my bench scraper here, we're going to fold this in half here. So now I've got a rectangle. I'm going to turn it here and then fold it in half again. This is the exact same process we used when we made the sour cream and onion biscuits. So now we've got 4 layers of pastry dough essentially. We're going to smush this down. I'm going to use the rolling pin just to help me out a bit, and we want to get this back to about a 1/2 inch thick. You can see it's super crumbly, it's super shaggy. We can fold this again, so over and in half again. All right, so this is 4 additional layers plus the 4 we had before. This is now 8 layers of flakiness inside. We are going to roll this out to a 6-inch disc. So if you don't want to have sticking and you want to make sure that everything's moving freely, the best way to do that is to move it frequently. So I'm doing a couple little passes here, and then I'm gonna use my bench scraper, go under, a little more flour, make sure nothing's stuck, and move it. If things fall off, just stick them back on. All right, and so this is approximately a 6-inch disc of dough. If you wanted to put this into the refrigerator, come back to it tomorrow or in a couple days, you could stop right here, just wrap it in some cling film and pop it in the fridge and you'll be good to go. I'm going to keep powering through this, and so I'm going to roll it out to a 14-inch diameter circle. All right, and this is about a 14-inch diameter. So to make it a little bit easier to move onto the parchment lined tray, I'm going to use my bench scraper here. I'm just going to slide underneath and we'll fold it in half and then in half again. Got my tray here, and then we'll unfold it really quickly. Cool. So I'm going to pop this into the refrigerator to chill while we make all of the fillings. Next up, we're prepping the onion and the garlic. The recipe calls for a large onion. My service didn't have large onions, only medium, so I'm going to go ahead and use 2 of those today. So we're just going to peel these and then thinly slice them. So I've got the onion chopped. This is obviously quite a lot. I think this is probably a little bit more than 1 large onion, but that's totally fine. I like onion. This is all about the onion anyhow, so a little more can't hurt. Next up, we're also going to peel and thinly slice 8 cloves of garlic. So I'm just taking them one at a time with the back of my chef's knife, smashing just to break it open, not totally pulverizing the garlic clove, but breaking it down just enough so that the paper kind of comes right off. And with all the garlic peeled, we can go ahead and just thinly slice this as well. All right, so with the onion and garlic sliced up, we can go ahead and move over to the stove and get these cooked down a bit. So now in a medium skillet over medium heat, I've got 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter. We're gonna melt these down until they foam up, and then we can add in the garlic and onions. The butter is just starting to foam, so we can go ahead and add in the garlic and onions, along with a little bit of kosher salt. All right, so I'm gonna pop a lid on these. We're gonna cook for 6 to 8 minutes, stirring occasionally until the onions are just starting to brown. All right, so we've been cooking the onions and garlic covered for 8 minutes now. They're super tender. They're starting to pick up a little bit of color, but by no means are these golden brown. So at this point, what we're going to do is cook them uncovered for another 5 minutes until they start to pick up that golden brown color and spot. We're going to just keep stirring this and keep an eye on it. And when we start to see that golden brown, we'll be ready. All right, so I am 15 minutes into my 5 minutes of cooking these to golden brown, and I'm still not there. So this is, I think, for a couple reasons. So one, my stove is terrible. I think my medium-low is much lower probably than the BA Test Kitchen's medium-low. Number two, I used 2 medium onions and assumed it was about the size of a large onion. Clearly it was a little bit more, which means there's more food in the pan and there's more moisture that we have to cook off before things start to caramelize. So those two kind of factors coming together means that my cook time is a lot more than the recipe said. You might not experience the same situation though. So it's really important to use your eyes, your senses to see when you're reaching the desired color on these onions. Don't just say 5 minutes and done. You know, it's all about, evaluating the situation that you're in your kitchen. You're the only one who can see what's happening in the pan. So I'm gonna hang out here a little bit longer until I reach that golden brown color that I'm looking for, but I think we're getting pretty close. So we'll be done soon. Okay, so I am really liking the golden brown color that we've developed in the pan here, so I'm going to go ahead and kill the heat. So in total, to reach this golden brown color, this took 25 minutes for me. All in, I'm really happy with the color that I developed here, so I'm going to just transfer this to the plate and we'll let these cool down. So while the onions were cooking, I went ahead and grated up 2 ounces of Parmigiano Reggiano just on the small holes of my box grater. So I've got this here. I'm just going to set this aside. And the next thing we need to do is prep our scallions. So here I've got 12 scallions in varying sizes. Some are bigger, some are smaller, and we're going to be cutting these on an extreme bias. So rather than just coins, we're going to be cutting at a harsh diagonal here. So I'm going to cut off the root end here, and then we'll see how extreme I can get these. Not too shabby. So these, I really do like the look. It is very dramatic compared to just a regular coin. So cutting the scallions on this kind of extreme bias is definitely a lot more challenging than I had expected. However, I think I did an okay job. It's not perfectly consistent, but I still think it looks nice and it'll be nice for the finished presentation. Again, if you don't want to do this, just cut rounds. That's totally fine. You don't have to do this or do less of a bias. I mean, it's up to you, whatever you want to do for your presentation. All right, so then in the same skillet we used before, I melted down just 1 more tablespoon of unsalted butter. Didn't clean the skillet out or anything. And we are just gonna go ahead and pop in the scallions and just toss these to get them coated in butter. And this is meant to be done off the heat, so no need to take it back over to the stove. Along with the butter, I've got a ½ teaspoon of kosher salt. All right, so these are nice and coated, and now we're ready to assemble the galette. So our crust has been in the refrigerator for about 40 minutes at this point, and we've got everything prepped, so now we're ready to just assemble. First up, we're gonna do 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard. Gonna smear this out. You could use just the back of the spoon or an offset spatula, and we're trying to get this within about 1.5 inches of the edge. All right, so now we've got our onions and garlic, which have cooled down, so we're sprinkling these over the surface. I'm just trying to get an even distribution. Next up, we've got the 2 ounces of Parmesan cheese. I guess this is going to be the glue that holds on all of these scallions that we're going to put on the top as well. Looks like a lot of cheese, so this should be pretty good. All right, now black pepper. Cool, so we've got everything in here. Now we're ready to fold the crust over. So using just a small knife, I'm gonna make little slits every 2 to 3 inches or so, just stopping where the Dijon mustard is. This is completely optional. It's gonna help us fold and get everything to lay down just a bit easier. And now we're going into fold. So taking the first one, the next one overlaps it just a bit. So you can see we're getting some nice overlap. So this is all kind of sitting down nice and neatly. All right, so we've got this all folded up. Now we're going to take all of these scallions and just pile them on top. Cool, so I'm gonna pop this into my preheated oven for about 55 minutes. Regardless of the time, the visual cue that we're looking for is a deep golden brown color. So my galette baked for a total of 52 minutes, and this is the end result. So you can see that the surface, the crust is nice and golden brown. On the back side, again, nice and brown. The crust feels super, super flaky. I let this sit at room temp for about 5 minutes to let the cheese kind of firm up a bit, so we had a little bit more structure. The scallions feel a little bit limp. They're a little bit wilty, a little bit of char on them, so I really do like the aesthetic of this. I'm just dying to dig in, so let's give it a taste. Wow. A little bit awkward to eat. I'm not sure if I'm doing it right. I feel like I got all of those scallions kind of all at once. However, the hit of that Dijon mustard, it was just such a small amount, but it gives that really kind of sharp, like tanginess to it. The cheese, I think, is not finished fully solidifying yet, but it's really tasty. The texture of the pastry here is incredible. This is flashbacks to the tomato galette. It's so nice. It's really, really savory. It doesn't feel indulgent at all, which is dangerous because there are 2 sticks of butter in here. It feels like, I could just sit here and eat the entire thing, and I'm not going to do that. I will refrain even though it's quarantine time. Overall, really happy with this galette. It wasn't really that difficult to make. It was kind of a few different steps along the way, but none of them were necessarily difficult. Flavor, texture, appearance of this, everything I think is, top notch. So definitely recommend that you give this a try. And I think it would be perfect for, brunch with some eggs, afternoon snack, maybe even dinner, who knows. But yeah, really happy with this. So hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you did, please be sure to give me a big thumbs up and click subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.